I lost my sanity once. Not to illness. Not to tragedy. But to betrayal. My ex-fiancé, Daniel Wright, made me question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and myself. His betrayal shattered me so deeply that I almost didn't come back from it. Almost. Because while his betrayal cost me my sanity, my revenge cost him everything. But before I get to the end, let me take you back to the night everything started unraveling. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special. I had just gotten home from work, tired, hair in a messy bun, reheating leftover pasta in the microwave. Daniel was supposed to be working late. He always said that just one more client call, or, don't wait up, babe, I'll grab food on the way home. But this time, something didn't feel right. When I reached for my phone to send him a quick check-in text, I saw a new notification flash across the screen. An email confirmation for a luxury hotel booking under Daniel's name. For that night. At first, I froze. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was for a client. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe. But then I opened it. And I saw the note. Can't wait to see you again, Clara. Not my name. Not my heart. Clara. I felt the air leave my body. My knees buckled, and I sat down on the floor of our apartment, phone in hand, pasta forgotten in the microwave. I stared at that message for what felt like hours. My fiancé. The man I had trusted with my future. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning it, savoring it, writing it down like some twisted love letter. And that's when the first crack formed in my sanity. But as I would soon learn, it was only the beginning. When Daniel came home that night, I confronted him. My hands were shaking, the email open on my phone. His response. He laughed. Actually laughed. Lauren, you're paranoid. Do you even hear yourself? You're imagining things. You're losing it. And the worst part. The way he said it, calm, collected, like he was the sane one and I was the crazy one, it almost worked. That's how gaslighting feels. It makes you doubt your own eyes, your own mind. And I did. For weeks, I wondered, what if I was overreacting? What if I really was losing it? But then the signs piled up. Late-night client calls that didn't add up. Receipts in his jacket pocket. Excuses that didn't make sense. Deep down, I knew. I just couldn't admit it yet. Because admitting it meant facing a truth that would break me in ways I never expected. At work, I started falling apart. I'd forget meetings I had scheduled. I'd find myself crying in the bathroom, staring into the mirror like I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Daniel noticed too. And instead of helping, he used it. He'd smirk and say, "See? This is what I mean. You're unstable. You need me to keep you together." And the terrifying part? I believed him. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a slow unraveling of everything I thought was true about myself. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I discovered the betrayal went far deeper than cheating. My nights turned into war zones. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every smile, every excuse Daniel ever gave me. My mind wouldn't stop. At work, I was useless. My boss pulled me aside twice in 1 week. "Lauren, are you okay?" she asked. And all I could do was nod and lie, "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was unraveling. I stopped eating. My clothes hung loose. Makeup couldn't hide the dark circles anymore. And every time Daniel saw me, he had the same smug look in his eyes. Like my collapse was proof he was right. But the cruelest part wasn't my collapse. It was how he twisted my pain to cover his betrayal. Daniel started planting seeds with our friends. Subtle comments at dinners. Quiet whispers. "She's been stressed. Work's getting to her. She's unstable." At first, people brushed it off. But repetition is poison. Soon, even Rachel, my best friend, asked if I was okay. And Daniel doubled down at home. "You're imagining things, Lauren. You need help." He said it so often, with such conviction, that sometimes I believed him. But then came the moment that shattered every last illusion. Because betrayal wasn't just about lies and cheating. It was about theft. One night, I logged into my bank account more out of habit than suspicion. But something was wrong. My savings account was almost empty. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Tens of thousands of dollars. Gone. And then I saw it. Transfers to a joint investment fund Daniel had set up. Except when I dug deeper, I realized the account wasn't for us. It was his. He had been using my money to bankroll Clara's lifestyle. Dinners. Trips. Designer gifts. All with the money I had worked years to save. I felt sick. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word anymore. This wasn't just cheating. It was theft. It was annihilation. And just when I thought I couldn't break any further, he delivered the final blow. Daniel didn't even pretend anymore. One night, he came home, tossed his keys on the counter, and said the words that split me in half. "I'm done, Lauren. You're unstable. Clara understands me. Goodbye." That was it. No apology. No shame. No hesitation. Just cold abandonment. I dropped to the floor, sobbing so hard my body shook. I thought my life was over. I thought my sanity was gone for good. But here's the truth about rock bottom. It can break you. Or it can ignite you. And for me, it lit the fire of revenge. And if you think this betrayal was brutal, trust me, it only gets darker. Subscribe now, so you don't miss what comes next, because I was just getting started. 4 days after Daniel left me, I barely existed. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I sat in the dark with the curtains drawn, replaying his last words over and over. "Clara understands me. Goodbye." Those words didn't just end our relationship. They ended the woman I used to be. Rachel, my best friend, refused to give up on me. She barged into my apartment one Saturday, sunlight flooding in as she ripped the curtains open. She slammed a folder down on the coffee table. Inside were hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even a Cartier invoice with Clara's initials written in Daniel's handwriting. Her voice was sharp, almost trembling with anger. "Lauren, this isn't about you being unstable. He's a liar. A thief. And he's spending your money like it's his playground." I stared at the receipts, my chest heaving. For weeks, I had carried shame, thinking maybe Daniel was right, maybe I was losing my mind. But as I looked at the cold, undeniable truth, the shame began to burn away. And what replaced it was rage. Pure, searing rage. And rage, when aimed correctly, can be more dangerous than love ever was. Rage alone wasn't enough. Rage without direction was just fire, and fire without aim only burned me. So I aimed it. I began small, collecting every scrap of information Daniel had left behind. I pulled old call logs. I dug through email chains. I checked credit card statements and pieced together late-night charges he couldn't explain. That's when Ethan stepped in. Ethan was a coworker of mine, quiet, unassuming, the kind of guy you barely notice in an office. But one afternoon, as I sat staring blankly at my screen, he stopped by my desk. "I don't mean to pry," he said softly, "but I know what Daniel's been doing. I've seen the transfers." I blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then leaned closer. "I work in finance, Lauren. The way he moves money, it's sloppy. If you want proof, I can help." I didn't know whether to trust him. My trust had been gutted. But something in his steady eyes told me he wasn't lying. That evening, Ethan showed me what he'd found. A spreadsheet, neat and color-coded, outlining suspicious transfers from my joint account into Daniel's so-called investment fund. And then, more transfers. Money funneled into accounts tied to luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, and Clara's favorite boutique. My blood ran cold. Because Daniel's betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was financial fraud. As Ethan and I cross-checked more data, a horrifying pattern emerged. Every transfer told a story. Valentine's Day weekend in Miami, paid with my savings. Clara's diamond bracelet, my account. The trip to Napa Valley he swore was a work retreat. My money again. But here was the part that made me want to scream. Clara's family believed Daniel was brilliant. A self-made success. A rising financial star. He'd bragged at dinners, puffing his chest, telling them how he'd built his wealth from smart investments. The truth. The only investment he ever made was draining me dry. I pictured him, standing in some marble dining room, smiling at Clara's wealthy parents while sipping wine bought with my savings. And then I pictured me, crying on my apartment floor, questioning my sanity. The injustice was a weight on my chest, but it also lit a fuse. Because now I wasn't just angry, I was determined. He didn't just steal my future. He used it to build his. And I was going to make sure that future crumbled. Here's the thing about heartbreak. At first, it makes you weak. It makes you doubt yourself, hate yourself, and even destroy yourself. But if you survive long enough, that same pain can harden into something stronger. That's what happened to me. Every sleepless night, every obsessive thought, every breakdown in the office bathroom, they weren't signs of weakness. They were training. Daniel thought I was broken. But I wasn't broken. I was sharpening. Every receipt, every email, every transfer, they weren't just reminders of what I lost. They were weapons. Proof. Ammunition. And I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to take everything he had built with my blood and sweat, and burn it to the ground. Because betrayal might have cost me my sanity. But revenge would cost him everything. Rage gave me energy. Proof gave me direction. But revenge, that required patience. I couldn't just expose Daniel in one dramatic blow, not yet. If I did, he'd play the victim, twist the story, and land on his feet like he always did. No. I needed him to dig his own grave, one lie at a time. So I started planting traps. The first thing I did was quietly reclaim what was left of my money. I shut down our joint accounts, froze transfers, and rerouted my salary into a private bank. I knew he'd notice eventually, but by the time he did, it would already be too late. Then I got creative. Using the documents Ethan helped me piece together, I drafted anonymous reports about Daniel's suspicious financial activity. Not to his firm just yet, but to a few carefully chosen whispers in his network. Friends of friends. Colleagues who thrived on gossip. And then, the timing. I set the reports to circulate right before Clara's family was due to host their annual dinner party, the one where Daniel planned to charm them into giving him a stake in their investment company. He thought that night would be his coronation. I was going to make it his humiliation. Because the thing about liars, they can't handle the light when you shine it on them. I wasn't invited to that dinner, of course. But I didn't need to be. I could picture it perfectly. Clara's family estate sprawling, glass chandeliers, waiters in white gloves carrying silver trays of champagne. Daniel, in his tailored navy suit, flashing that perfect smile, shaking hands, laughing too loudly. Clara, glowing in designer silk, hanging on his arm like he was the prize catch of the season. Except this time, something was different. As he mingled, Clara's father pulled him aside with a tight smile. I've been hearing some troubling things, Daniel. About your finances. Daniel's smile faltered, just slightly, before he recovered. Oh, I assure you, it's all nonsense. Competitors spreading rumors, you know how it is. But whispers spread fast. By dessert, 2 of Clara's cousins were murmuring in the corner. By coffee, one of Clara's uncles, a hedge fund manager, confronted him more directly. Funny how your expenses and reimbursements don't line up, isn't it? Daniel laughed it off, but his jaw was tight. Clara looked confused, her eyes darting between him and her family. For the first time, cracks appeared in the perfect picture. And me. I was across town, sipping wine on my couch, waiting for Ethan's text. When it came, I nearly laughed out loud. His sweating bullets. It's working. And this was only the beginning. The golden boy mask was slipping, and I wasn't done yet. The fallout from that dinner spread faster than I imagined. Within a week, Daniel's firm heard the whispers. Clients began calling, not outright accusing, but asking careful questions. Daniel, could you walk me through these reimbursements? Can you explain why this expense shows up twice? I could almost hear the strain in his voice when Ethan told me. He'd been in a meeting where Daniel lost his cool, snapping at an intern who had innocently flagged a missing invoice. It was the first time, Ethan said, that people in the office had seen Daniel's perfect composure crack. And then came the dinner with one of his biggest clients, the one that tipped everything. Daniel had taken them to a high-end steakhouse downtown, trying to smooth over concerns. But one of the clients brought up the rumors directly. We've heard some things, Daniel. We need to be reassured. Instead of staying calm, he exploded. This is ridiculous. Do you know who I am? His voice carried across the restaurant. Someone pulled out their phone. The video didn't hit the internet, but it circulated privately through the firm, shared in hushed tones, like passing contraband. Daniel, the golden boy. Daniel, the charmer. Reduced to a red-faced man screaming at the very people who once adored him. And if Daniel thought that humiliation was bad, he had no idea what was coming next. Chapter 15, Gaslighter Exposed. For weeks, Daniel had called me unstable, paranoid, crazy. He had painted me as a hysterical woman whose mind couldn't be trusted. But now, the evidence was on my side. And I was about to flip the script. Ethan and I pulled together everything, screenshots of Daniel's texts, where he laughed about my meltdowns. His Venmo history, with payments to Clara disguised as business dinners. Bank statements that proved he drained my savings. And most damning of all, the timeline, my report of his cheating and theft, immediately followed by him smearing me as unstable. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was character assassination. I drafted a file. Neat. Professional. Surgical. It looked less like revenge and more like a legal dossier. And then I leaked it, anonymously, to his firm's internal compliance team. The very system he had once weaponized against me was now turned on him. And this time, there was no gaslighting his way out. Because the proof wasn't in my words. It was in his. When I leaked the file, I expected fireworks. An explosion. Daniel being dragged out of the office in handcuffs, or at least a confrontation. But that's not how corporate revenge works. It doesn't scream. It whispers. 4 days, nothing happened. No emails. No meetings. Not a single word from the firm. On the surface, life carried on. Employees tapping keyboards. Phones ringing. Daniel still strutting into work with his polished shoes and tailored suits, smiling like he still owned the room. But beneath the surface, something shifted. The laughter in the break room stopped when he walked in. Conversations cut short. Whispered rumors spread just out of earshot. Ethan texted me one afternoon, they've opened a quiet audit. Compliance has the file. He has no idea yet. And I realized the silence wasn't a delay. It was strategy. Legal wasn't going to warn him. They were digging, quietly, methodically, letting him hang himself with his own rope. And that silence. It was louder than shouting. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means everything is about to. The silence gnawed at Daniel. For a man who thrived on control, on always being 2 steps ahead, the uncertainty was poison. He started drinking more. His late nights became later. His sharp suits started to wrinkle. That golden boy shine dulled by stress he couldn't name. And then he made his fatal mistake. It was a Friday happy hour. A group of employees had gathered at a downtown bar. Daniel, 3 whiskeys in, leaned too close to 2 interns and said the words that would bury him. "I've been doing this for years. You think I'm scared of some little whistleblower? I put people like that in their place." The interns froze. They laughed awkwardly, but the damage was done. One of them happened to be friends with Rachel, my Rachel. By Saturday morning, I had the exact quote in my hands. It was the final puzzle piece. Proof not just of fraud, not just of theft, but of retaliation. He had leaked, smeared, and gaslit me deliberately. And he was stupid enough to brag about it. Daniel thought his words would vanish into a smoky bar. Instead, they became the knife I'd twist. I could have blown up then. I could have marched into his office with every receipt and screamed the truth. But that would have been messy, emotional, easy to dismiss. No. If Daniel had taught me anything, it was the power of appearances. So I chose precision. I drafted a single email. Not to gossip. Not to friends. To the people who mattered most. The firm's legal department, the ethics committee, and the board of directors. The subject line? Simple. Concerning evidence regarding Daniel Wright. The body? Calm. Clinical. Almost cold. Attached screenshots of his Venmo transfers to Clara. Bank statements showing the stolen savings. The timeline of my instability conveniently lined up with his cover-up. The intern's statement, word for word, about him bragging at happy hour. No emotion. No accusations. Just facts. At the bottom, one final line, "I trust you will handle this matter appropriately. For transparency, I have also copied my attorney on this email." I hit send. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. Not joy. Not triumph. Just peace. Because revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, with receipts. The next day, my phone stayed quiet. No response. No acknowledgement. Nothing. At first, panic clawed at me. Had I done enough? Would they believe me? What if Daniel got to them first, spun his golden boy charm into another escape? But then I walked into the office. And I didn't need an email to know. The air was different. Thick. Tense. The kind of silence you get before a thunderstorm splits the sky. People weren't whispering about me anymore. They were whispering about him. Heads tilted as Daniel walked by, their eyes narrowing, their voices hushed. His smile was brittle. His jokes were forced. And though no one said it out loud, everyone knew something was happening. That silence stretched for a full day. Then 2. Then 3. On the 4th morning, Ethan slipped me a note under the table in the cafeteria. 4 words, written in quick pen strokes. "They've pulled him in." I looked up, heart pounding, and saw Daniel being led down the hallway toward the glass conference room. His shoulders tight. His jaw clenched. His mask was finally cracking. And in that moment, I knew, the storm had arrived. And Daniel was standing in the middle of it. When they pulled Daniel into that glass-walled conference room, I almost felt pity. Almost. He sat there in his tailored suit, still clinging to his mask of control, while across the table sat 3 people who mattered more than any client or connection: legal, compliance, and HR. The very departments he had once manipulated. The very tools he had used to paint me as unstable. Now they were his executioners. For hours, the glass room became a stage. Employees passing by pretended not to look, but their eyes lingered on the cracks in Daniel's composure. His smooth tone raised, his gestures sharper, his smile strained. Ethan messaged me from the inside, they're grilling him hard. He's sweating. Meanwhile, I was called in for my own session. But mine was different. Calm. Respectful. They asked questions. I answered, professionally and without emotion. Every answer matched the evidence. Every timeline aligned. For the first time, I wasn't the crazy one in the story. I was the anchor. The voice of reason. When I walked out of that room, shoulders straight, I caught a glimpse of Daniel still inside. His jaw was tight. His eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man drowning, and this time, no one was reaching in to save him. And if he thought the worst was over, he was wrong. The storm had only just begun. The next week was pure chaos for Daniel. Every day, another meeting. Another round of questioning. Another layer of evidence pulled apart in front of him. At first, he tried to charm his way through. Smiling. Laughing. Acting as if the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But charm only works when people want to believe you. And no one wanted to anymore. Witnesses came forward. The interns repeated his drunken happy hour confession. Ethan quietly verified the suspicious reimbursements. Even IT provided logs that matched my timeline of the leaks. The walls were closing in, and Daniel knew it. One afternoon, I passed him in the hallway. His tie was loose, his eyes wild. He looked at me with a fury I can't describe, the kind of look that says, "You did this to me." And maybe I did. But really, he had done it to himself. The breaking point came during a final closed-door session. Ethan told me later, Daniel had lashed out, shouting, blaming everyone, me, the interns, even IT. His composure shattered. His mask gone. He stormed out of the building, red-faced, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. And for the first time in his career, the golden boy of the firm looked like what he really was, a fraud. And once a mask cracks, there's no putting it back together. After Daniel's meltdown, the hammer dropped fast. Legal announced an internal overhaul. HR was quietly restructured. Daniel was let go to pursue other opportunities, the corporate phrase for fired in disgrace. But the fallout didn't stop there. Jason Marks, one of the executives Daniel had been funneling kickbacks to, resigned within a week, claiming personal reasons. Monica, the other manager tied to his schemes, was removed from her team. It was a purge. A cleansing fire. And everywhere I went in the office, people looked at me differently. Not with pity. Not with suspicion. But with respect. Then came the call. The COO herself asked me to step into her office. She thanked me for my courage and integrity. Words that had once sounded like weapons now felt like armor. But it wasn't just thanks she offered. She laid a settlement agreement in front of me. Money. A lot of it. Enough to make me walk away quietly. For a moment, I was tempted. After everything I'd been through, it felt like justice. But then I thought about it. Money wasn't enough. Money could vanish. Money could be forgotten. I wanted something stronger. Something lasting. Because revenge isn't always about taking. Sometimes it's about shaping what comes next. I pushed the settlement back across the table. The COO raised an eyebrow. "I don't want a payout," I said. My voice was steady, firm. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. I want policy reform. I want stronger compliance oversight. And I want a protected internal role where no one can ever silence me again. She studied me for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. Done. Just like that, I wasn't a broken whistleblower anymore. I wasn't the crazy ex-fiancé Daniel had painted me as. I was the firm's new compliance lead, the one who would make sure no one else endured what I had. Daniel had been erased from the company. his allies scattered, his reputation in tatters. And me, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. As I walked out of the coup's office that day, I thought about Daniel. Alone. Jobless. Reputation destroyed. His betrayal had cost me my sanity. But my revenge? It had cost him everything. And yet, my story wasn't over. Because the final twist was still to come. Months passed. On the surface, life began to feel normal again. I went to work. I led meetings. I reviewed compliance reports. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without that constant weight pressing down on my chest. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights, I'd still wake up sweating, hearing Daniel's voice in my head, "You're paranoid. You're unstable. You need me." Except now, I didn't believe it. I'd proven otherwise. Every scar I carried had become proof that I had survived, proof that he was the liar, not me. Still, I knew Daniel wouldn't disappear quietly. Men like him don't fade away. They plot, they scheme, they try to rebuild the ruins of their empire. And sure enough, one afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. A standard HR message reference check request. For Daniel Wright. I stared at it, frozen. My hands hovered over the keyboard. My heart thudded in my chest. It was almost poetic. After all the lies, the theft, the humiliation, his future was now in my hands. And the question was simple: what would I do with it? At first, temptation whispered in my ear. I could say something scathing. I could tell the new company every filthy detail. I could destroy him with a single paragraph. But then I remembered something. Revenge doesn't always need words. Sometimes, silence cuts deeper. So instead, I attached one document, the final legal summary of the internal investigation. Clinical. Cold. Every fraud, every leak, every act of retaliation laid bare in black and white. No commentary. No flourish. Just facts. I hit send. Somewhere, Daniel was waiting for that new opportunity. Somewhere, he was hoping to charm his way into another golden boy role. And now, all they'd see was the truth. And that's when I realized, my revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about leaving him with no voice at all. The fallout was almost immediate. I never got a direct reply. Of course, HR departments don't send thank you notes for ruining someone's chances. But within a week, whispers reached me. Daniel's application had been quietly dropped. His name was blacklisted from the firm's hiring pool. He tried again at another company. Same process. Another reference check. Same result. Over and over, doors closed in his face. The man who once strutted through offices like he owned them was now wandering through locked hallways, knocking on doors that would never open again. And me. I thrived. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading. My new compliance role gave me a voice I'd never had before. I shaped policy, protected employees, and built the kind of safeguards that would make sure no one else endured what I had. One evening, months later, a journalist reached out. They were writing a story on corporate whistleblowers and wanted an anonymous perspective. I hesitated. But then, I remembered all those nights crying in silence, doubting myself, thinking no one would believe me. So I gave them one quote. Just one. Silence protects power. But receipts protect the truth. The line ran in the article. And when I read it, I smiled. Because sometimes revenge isn't just about payback. Sometimes, it's about rewriting the rules so no one else gets played. But the real poetic justice? That came later. It was a Monday morning, grey and drizzly, the kind of morning where coffee is your only friend. I was sifting through routine compliance emails when I saw a familiar name pop up in the subject line. Daniel Wright. For a split second, my stomach dropped. Old reflex. But then I read the subject line again. Reference check request. Again. Except this time, it wasn't from a prestigious firm or a shiny corporate empire. It was from a mid-tier consultancy in the suburbs. Smaller. Less glamorous. The kind of place Daniel once would have sneered at. I opened the email. My eyes lingered on his name. And then, slowly, a smile spread across my face. I forwarded the same legal summary. No words. No comment. Just the truth. I hit send. And that was it. Game over. That night, as I sat by my window with a glass of wine, I thought back to the beginning. To the night I found the hotel receipt. To the way Daniel laughed at me, called me paranoid, told me I was losing my mind. Maybe, for a while, I had lost it. Betrayal has a way of breaking people apart. But what he never counted on was that I'd rebuild stronger, sharper, unstoppable. His betrayal cost me my sanity. But my revenge cost him everything. And as I took that final sip of wine, I whispered the words that had become my mantra. Game over. If this story left you satisfied, subscribe now because the next one might just outdo it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you found that hotel receipt? I read every single one.